What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Paint Society, the channel where the learning doesn't stop when the video ends. Today we're going to tackle how to spray a seamless, flawless, and smooth and even silver metallic paint job. Now, I feel your pain. This is one of the toughest paints to lay down as a silver metallic, because we can get striping, we can get modeling, we can see where our blend is, and we have all those issues today that I'm going to help you solve. So let's get into the booth and let's start the learning. What we have here is a 2003 RSX, only got 60,000 miles on it, and well, it came in for some minor cleanup on the front end. And this is what we got going on. We have full paint on the hood, we have a blend into the fender, we have a full paint on the fender, and then we have a blend into the door. And then just to make sure we have good color match, I'm gonna take the A-pillar and blend it up as well. And it's great and all that, we have it ready to go, but let's talk about how we got here. You see, if you don't know how to prep silver properly, it will tell you right away with those silver metallics sinking into those aggressive sand scratches or maybe pits that you missed. So let me take you back and show you how it all started.
And the damage was very minor with some little stone chips along the way, and we used our 3M prepping pad to help level those out, alongside with some body filler, just a little bit of glaze and some small indentations to make sure everything was nice and completely smooth. Now on that fender we did have a good amount of rock chipping, so we took it down to metal and we used a direct to metal sanding primer, a urethane primer that's going to give us a nice build over our areas that we feathered out. Now, it's very important to make sure you feather out those chips in different areas nice and smooth, so that when the primer goes on it, you're going to be able to block it out even better. Now, at this point, we used our guide coat, and the guide coat will show us small imperfections or scratches along the way, and we're blocking it here with a 320 grit, making sure we follow an X pattern. And we reapply our guide coat, and then from there we'll use a 400 grit on a DA sander just to refine the scratch a little bit more and get it ready for sealer. And since we're sealing, well, we can stop right here on our primered areas. Now, moving along to our blend panel, we're using a 1000 grit, a K1000 from Eagle Abrasives, and this is going to give us a good little fine scratch for our blend to lay right into. And we have a hand pad for our tight areas so we don't burn through. Now, when moving along, we realized that we had to go into the passenger side door for a blend because the fender had a little bit too much damage and not enough blend room. So once again, using K1000 grit, giving us a nice surface to blend right into. Anything less than K1000 on a blend panel can show fine scratches. Now, getting it ready for the booth, we're going to do a final degreasing of the car, making sure we pressure wash it along the way, get any of that silicone or grease that might have flung up onto the paint. Now the paint booth is ready to accept this beautiful RSX and give it a fresh new coat of paint. So we're just going to go ahead and get it all messed up, and that is exactly where we are right now, and we're ready to get this thing back on track.
And now that we're ready to spray, let's go into detail about what is going on here. So this is what we call a blend area. This whole fender was replaced at once. That's why there's no primer work. It doesn't have any chips or anything. So I like to use the K1000 grit, nice and fine. And what we're pretty much going to be doing here is we're going to be blending onto the fender. The reason why we blend onto this fender is because if we spray the hood only, even though we have the same color code, there is about 15 different variants of color. Actually, a total of 21 to be 100% exact. Now, what do all these little colors mean? This means variances, different shades. That's why it's so important to have a spray out card or a test panel card that is really going to show you, does your color match? Now, all this should be done prior to even sanding the car. Make sure you get the color first. Now, moving along, we said we're going to do sealer on the hood, we're going to do sealer on the fender, and then we're going to be blending into the door. So we're going to go ahead and talk about why do I need sealer. Now, as for the hood and this fender, we're going to seal it. Now, what is sealer? It is a thinned out primer. That does not mean you can take your primer and thin it out however you want. You don't make the rules. The people who design the paint makes the rules. And how do you find out the rules? You go to the technical data sheet, also known as the TDS, which you can find online in a PDF form. All you gotta do is type in the type of paint you have. In there, it'll tell you flash times, it'll tell you tip size, and it'll tell you how to mix the paint. So why can't I just put my base coat right over here? Well, you can, but you would need to prep the hood and the fender, the primer areas, especially on the silver, very, very fine, up to maybe 800 grit. Since we're using a sealer, we only need to bring it up to 400 because that sealer is gonna go on, it's gonna fill in those fine little scratches. Also, it's gonna give us the protection. It's gonna create a cushion between the paint, all right, between the primer and the paint, so that when a rock hits it, it's not gonna chip as easily. So we're gonna take our sealer into our fender completely, but we're gonna make sure we mask off our door first and we mask off our fender. So once everything is completely cleaned off, we're gonna start to mask off the areas we don't want sealer. And the reason why we're masking it off is because sealer will overlay onto the fender if we don't, and we don't need that. This is our color that matches the door. We need to really preserve it. We want to make sure and make certain that only the blend is coming on here, only color. We don't need sealer because it's been scuffed up with 1000 grit. It's not like it's been really roughed up like the hood has that does need the sealer. So this is the sealer. Now you can get sealer anywhere. Your local paint shop that sells auto body paints, you can get it. Also put in a link in the description, Tamco Paints, they do sell sealer as well. And this is what we're gonna spray on the hood right now and the fender. And I'm using my Iwata W400 LVX 1.4. This is a primer sealer gun, and that's what it's designed for, although it does spray base and clear perfectly. We're gonna use this to really get our sealer on nice and smooth. If you don't have a good sealer gun, the top coats that follow are just gonna fall into a bad substrate or surface. So you want this to lay nice and smooth, and that's just what we're gonna do right now.
For this application, we only needed 1 coat of sealer, and it covered very well. Now remember that sealer gun is putting down your foundation. So like I mentioned before, if this foundation is not flat, then what's going to happen is the satin silver metallics are going to fall into a gritty surface. So you really need this surface to be nice and smooth. So we're putting it on our hood, and we'll carry it onto our fender from edge to edge, and we'll allow this to flash.
And that's just it. 1 coat of sealer. You don't need to put it on heavy. We're gonna let this flash. Flash is a term we use for dry. You can see how it's already starting to flash. It's turning dull. This is a good sign already. The sealer is 100% flashed. It is ready for its next coat. You can see how dull it is. Now this next coat is not gonna be sealer. What I'm actually gonna do is put base coat over my fender and over my hood. I'm not unmasking yet. The reason why is I don't want all that overspray carrying onto my blend panels while I'm still trying to get the coverage on my sealed panels. If we do this, if we were to unmask right now, all that overspray will cause what we call sand piling. And sand piling is a buildup of a silver metallic or any base coat, and it's just gonna get rough and rough and rough. So let's minimize the amount of overspray we have on our blend panels, and let's get this in color first. Let's get good coverage. Then let's pull off our paper and let's do our blend. It's really that easy. You don't complicate things when you're painting. Now before we spray that base, let me talk real quick about base coat. Now, if you have the choice, if you're at the paint store and there's a difference between a little bit better base coat, you wanna go with a little bit better base coat if you're doing a metallic. It's just gonna lay out a lot smoother, a lot nicer. I will say we have a very good setup here, but that does not mean that you're gonna get a flawless finish just because you're pulling the trigger. One thing I do recommend, especially in South Florida or most any type of climate, if you can, extra slow reducer, okay? They have slow reducer, okay? Then they make extra slow reducer in most paint brands, I hope. I'm not 100% sure. At the very least, get slow. All right, what extra slow is gonna do, it's going to keep that paint open much longer. So when that paint hits the panel, right, when the paint is hitting the panel, let's say my hand's the panel, it's not dry. What causes stripes? What causes modeling? Dry paint. Dry paint, when it lands on a surface, is changing the coarseness and the texture, giving you that stripe. So something with an extra slow reducer that has been already mixed into the paint here, okay, that is what's going to help. Now, you might say, how do I get extra slow reducer? Well, the way it works is the paint store will give you the paint, and then you need to add your own reducer. That is when you would get your extra slow. If you are in a shop, well, then check your jobber, see if they offer that as well. Let's head into the booth. I'm using the Motivated Painters Walcom 1.3 base HDE spray gun. I've used it a few times. It's a great gun. Let's see what it does on silver.
And using this gun for the first time on a larger job, and you can see, combined with the extra slow reducer and this paint gun, it is going on wet. You need to spray it wet. Now I'm moving around 75% overlap at a decent speed. I'm not pouring it on, and you can tell there's already zero striping. And what works for me, the pressure on this gun is around 18 to 20 psi, a little bit low for most guns, but I feel that it does the job for what I need. And we're moving along to the fender. Remember, just like the sealer, edge to edge, we're getting the coverage. That is the whole point of this coat.
That first coat just went down. Do you see how it's wet? Kind of has like a little bit of a gloss. I'm letting the gun do the work. I don't have any model at all right now. A little bit of patchiness because, well, you don't have full coverage. But if you have the right mixture, you have the right gun, it's gonna make your life 100 times easier. That's why I don't mess around with cheap guns, because I need the job to come out good. I need it to look perfect. I'm in a professional environment. People are paying good money for my knowledge, my experience, and my tools. Let this flash for a good 10 minutes. I'm good with the coverage. After 10 minutes of flashing, I'm gonna pull off this masking. So the paint has flashed off. So we're gonna remove our areas for our blend panel. So what we're going to be using here is a clear base, also known as Intercoat Clear, blending additive, clear base coat, all the same stuff. You can find this still at your auto body store as well. Look for those names that I gave you. And what I'm going to do is put it on a door, and I'm going to put it on the fender. And I use this more as a visual aid to show me how my blend is blending out. Now you can see there are two different colors here, right? Well, I will tell you, they look different because this is a sanded clear coat, so it gives it that more white, chalky look. And well, they aren't 100% identical colors. That's why we're blending right here. So let me put this on the door and then the fender, and then we'll proceed to blending it out.
And spraying blending clear is not 100% a necessity, but for silver metallics, it definitely helps out. It fills in the tiny little micro scratches on a blend panel, and for me, it creates a visual cue, and it's showing me how well is my blend blending out, because it gives us the same exact sheen as the base coat when a base coat lays down.
Now we're ready to blend into our fender and into our door on the other side. I allow this blending additive to flash off. I know in the past I've told you to keep it wet, but since we're using an extra slow reducer, it's gonna go on there nice and smooth. It's not gonna leave any sort of halo edge, nothing like that. So let's go over our whole entire panel, keeping it nice and even, 75% overlap.
Now the application for my particular job, I only put one coat of base down before pulling down that paper. And the reason why is because I got good coverage. Now let's say you don't have perfect coverage. Put down a second coat. You don't want to pull off the paper until you have good coverage on your sealed areas, because then you're just going to be putting too much overspray of your base coat onto your blend panels, and it's going to carry too far, and before you know it, you're going to have to go into the next panel or wipe it all off in the paint booth. We've all been there before, unfortunately, at one point or another. But what we're doing here is just gradually blending it into the door. No fancy technique. The reducer does the work for you. The paint gun does the work for you. All I'm doing is I'm guiding it. That's all I'm doing.
And the first coat, very lightly, you can see how it's already blending out. The two colors are coming together. Still a little bit light on the front half. We'll get that squared away in the next couple coats. But so far, so good. Let's allow this another 10 to 15 minutes to really flash off. Well, second coat is down, and the number one word I want to use is consistency. Did you notice on my sealer, in my first coat of base and second, I start on that side and bring it all the way around? Same thing for base, same thing for clear. We want to create that consistency so we're familiar, all right? We don't want to start here, do a little bit there. Create consistency, create patterns. That's going to make sure that your work is the same every single time. We'll go ahead and take a look, see if it needs anything more after that.
And 15 minutes later, we're moving on to our third coat. You really want to make sure you give those coats of paint really time to dry and make sure they're flash. Now, I don't really tack between coats. The only time I really tack is before I spray my sealer, and then I will tack before my clear. I try to limit my contact with the actual panel itself. What I'm doing on this third coat is I'm making sure I have enough coverage between the fender and the door, and I'll tell you later, this is the most common place that you'll be able to see a blend. Like when you're sitting in traffic, you can look down the side of a car and exactly tell where it's been painted.
Third coat is down, and I want to do a little bit of fine tuning to this door right here. If you notice any color match, it's going to be in your side panel. So let me take you into the mixing room and show you what I do. So this is the clear base that I just had before. So there's not an exact science to it, but I try to do 1-to-1, and the idea is we are going to be reducing the transparency in the color, right? So I have color here, and I'm going to mix just about the same amount, all right? And then I'm going to take some extra slow reducer, and I'm going to add about maybe 15 to 20% in, okay? I'm going to get it really diluted, and what this is going to do is just really help to lose the strength of the color. And we're going to do this over the whole panel, kind of as like a little bit of a drop coat, and this is really going to help smooth things out even more, make those blends look even more transparent. You see how clear that is? Okay, it's losing its strength. So let's go ahead and pop it on the car. You can wait your flash time about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you'll be good to go.
And a lot of painters will look for that one trick, that one answer to all their questions, and it's not that. The fact of the matter is, to this point, there should be already really even paint on your surface, and this last coat, all I'm doing is increasing the distance just by a hair. There's not a perfect pressure, there's not a perfect distance, there's not a perfect overlap. It is relevant to your job and what you're doing. What I'm doing with this thinned out mixture is just going over the whole panel one more time, just cheap insurance to make sure that my blend looks good in any sort of lighting circumstance.
And you might be wondering why the lights are off, because we have our sunlight here, and we're going to check out our blend. Do I like it? Can I see the blend? Because you're not going to see the blend so much in here as you're going to see it outside. And let me tell you, that extra slow reducer, it just melts so smoothly into the adjacent panels. No streaking, everything looks nice and clean. Our blend over here looks good. We don't have any overspray or paint on that piece of tape. That's a good indication that we have a nice color match between the fender and the door. Let's allow this to dry for a good 15 minutes, and I'll be ready to clear it. We got our clear mixed up. We're about to smash on 2 coats. I'm going to show you one. This video is about silver metallic, so we won't get too technical into the clear aspect. But at this point with the silver metallic, if you're just not going your way and it's rough and it's looking ugly, take 800 grit on an interface pad with a DA, sand it down, smooth it out, start back over. Okay, but make sure your base coat is very, very dry. If it's not, it's going to be a big, big mess. Let's head into the booth and let's see what our paint job looks like with some shine on it.
And well, that's going to conclude this video, and I hope you can use the knowledge in this video and apply it to your personal projects so that you can spray beautiful finishes just like this. And if you did learn something and you want to rep some Paint Society, go over to paintsocietystore.com, check out the merch on the website, some really cool products over there. And well guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it, it's just paint. I'll see you guys on the next one.